begin, I want to begin with a small experiment. I'm going to ask you something and tell me what's the first image that comes to your mind. And yes, I need all of you to participate. I want you to picture an engineer in your mind. Now, I want you to raise your hand for how many people pictured a nerdy boy sitting in a room with 5 computers. How many of you pictured a construction worker even? And maybe how many of you pictured a train driver, which is an understandable mix-up? And finally, how many of you pictured a peppy 17-year-old who looks like me? All right, everyone that did not raise their hands for me can now leave the room. I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, I'm really used to this. When I tell people that I want to major in engineering, there's usually this very specific pause, as if their brain is buffering. Sometimes they ask me, what kind, very slowly, as if we take it step by step, we'll both survive the answer together. And my sister skipped all of that and just said, ew, why do you want to study engineering? But I have loved technology forever, literally forever. And this picture is not AI. But for right now, I cannot blame you. Because somewhere along the way, engineering got branded as cold, antisocial, and unglamorous. Which is funny, considering it's the reason your phone works, it's the reason your water runs, and it's the very reason this microphone has not betrayed me yet. But this stereotype stops being optional. This stereotype stops being harmless when engineering stops being optional. Because the truth is this. In today's world, AI is one of the most technologically advanced moments in human history. It can predict crime, simulate cities, and diagnose diseases, even simulate entire universes. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The future is being built very fast and very unevenly. Today, 2.9 billion people still remain offline, which is 37% of the world's population. AI does not arrive everywhere equally. It doesn't arrive in every classroom, every village, every zip code, or even every gender at the same time. We often talk about it as if it's some inevitable force rolling forward regardless of who participates in it. But AI is not inevitable. It is taught, it is trained, and is deployed by these very human hands. Seemingly worse, 272 million children still remain out of schools. Thus, the truth is this. Too many people never even get the chance to learn how to shape and use this technology. Too many people do not get the chance to help build our future. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack interest, but simply because they lack access. And I began to feel this tension very personally. Because at the same time, I was being trained to build systems that would change the world, while knowing that so many people, especially women, especially children in rural areas without access to technology, were being left out of the very conversation. And this dissonance bothers me. It feels so unfinished. I realized that if this era of AI was going to mean anything, it has to stop being about just building more complex machines and start being about building fairer futures. Because what's the point of moving forward if we're leaving half the world behind? And this realization led me to building my passion project. I wanted to take something that felt abstract, exclusive, and intimidating and turn it into something that felt intuitive, human, and accessible. I wanted children who had never known what advanced technology is, who had never been told that they were technical, to realize that this world is something that they already understood. Thus, the very first lesson that I taught didn't involve any code in foreign languages or any equations that they ever heard. All I did was I brought a pen, held it up, and asked 2 very simple questions. I asked them, holding it up, what am I holding? And the classroom erupted in giggles. The children laughed and said, ma'am, that's a pen. And I said, fantastic, but how did you know that this is a pen? And at that moment, there was a pause. The giggles quietened down, and the students looked at me. They actually thought for a second, and someone shrugged and said, ma'am, I don't know, the shape, the ink, the color, we've seen like 1,000,000 pens in our life. Exactly, I said. At some point, someone told you what this was. You saw it over and over the years, all over the place, and now you recognize it instantly, without thinking. Congratulations, you are a machine learning model. Machines learn the exact same way, through examples, instruction, and repetition. Neural networks don't think like the way humans do, but they learn the same way we do. They also recognize these factors, features, and common patterns, like the shape and the ink, and they're told what is what. just like someone would have told you someday what a pen is. And that moment changed the classroom. What felt like an unreachable technology suddenly seemed like something so familiar to them. And what seemed so distant now seemed like something they actually understood on some level already. Thus, this single question turned into a 2-hour lesson. And by the end of it, every single student had built their own online machine learning model using a teachable machine. But to me, more importantly, rather than just following my instructions the way we do in our normal classes, they were asking me questions. Students asked me, what happens behind the model? How does it decide? Why does it fail sometimes? Curious, human questions. And this made me so happy. Because at the end of the day, although AI is so helpful, useful, and is taking us forward in this new age, to me, technology and AI is just so cool. And it makes me so happy to bring more people into this world. In fact, one of the groups decided to train their model to recognize raised hands in a classroom to help take attendance. And it worked, until at some point it stopped recognizing students that sat next to the windows. So what did the students do? They went back to the data and checked and saw that most of the images were taken from the center of the classroom. And then, even without my input, genuinely, the students said that the model isn't broken, it just doesn't see everyone yet. And then, independently, the students went and took pictures from every corner of the classroom to ensure everyone is recognized at an appropriate accuracy level. Even that small instance showed me that the hardest part about making AI is not about becoming smarter, becoming faster, becoming deeper. The hardest part is recognizing the omissions that we are making. And I extrapolate this to our daily life when we make these omissions every day by leaving such talented individuals out of the very picture. And that experience shaped everything that came next for me. I designed 10 modular AI lessons that could be taught anywhere across the world to students who had never touched technology before because it was grounded in their everyday language and their experiences. The goal wasn't to create future programmers overnight, but it was to shape their self-perception and to replace their fears with familiarity. And the results were powerful. In online versions of Athena AI, students who had never engaged with it before were now asking questions, going deeper, making their own models. And the technology didn't transform them, but they transformed their relationship with it. And that's the metamorphosis that I care about the most. We often talk about who qualifies as an engineer, as if it's a fixed identity reserved for people with certain degrees, certain credentials, or certain types of confidence. But that's not true. Because engineering at its core is simply problem solving under constraint. It's the act of designing solutions with the resources that you have. And access should not be a matter of luck. Everyone, from the farmer who brings food to your table, to the woman designing her home out of straws and tarpaulins living on the streets, is an engineer. And the gap we see later is not the lack of brilliance that they have, but it's simply the lack of a paved road. I want to pause here because I need to acknowledge something very honestly. I was lucky. I was deeply unfairly lucky. I grew up in a family that didn't just tolerate my curiosity, but they actively fed it. When I wanted to know how something worked, I wasn't told to stop. I was encouraged. When I wanted to build something, I was helped. I was told that it's better to build something, try and fail again, rather than to never try at all. In fact, I started learning robotics in 3rd or 4th grade. Not because I was extraordinary, but just because I had the access. I had the access to tools. I had the access to time. I had the access to mentors who took me seriously. I had exposure to a world that told me that this exists for you too. And that kind of exposure changes the trajectory of a life. And that exposure is the reason I'm standing here today. And yet, even with all the privilege that I had initially, even in international schools, in large competitions, in advanced research environments, I still often found myself as one of the few girls in the room. Sometimes, the only one. In fact, in one of the most technically difficult projects that I worked on, which was pure hardcore mechanical engineering at a research lab, I was the only girl employed on the project. But these experiences did not discourage me. They just made something painfully clear. That the issue is not a lack of ability, it's simply a lack of invitation. We grew up thinking that boys are better at math, better at science, better at building things. It becomes so obvious that we rarely even stop to question it anymore. But research has questioned it. Hundreds of neuroscience studies have showed that at a young age, boys and girls have the same interest in sciences and math. They have the same learning patterns, the same capability, even down to the same neural activity. So if the ability is the same at the start, then the gap we're seeing in this industry now is not a matter of biology. It's simply a matter of the environment that they're raised in. Because I know without question there are so many young girls like me across socioeconomic groups that love building things. We like to say that boys grow up with Legos and cars while girls grow up with something else. And unfortunately, that's true. Because in today's world, 31% of STEM toys, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, are marketed towards boys, while only 11% are marketed towards girls. From the toys that we market to the expectations that we reinforce, even the language that we use, we're shaping these children's perceptions early. Even something as small as the Teen Talk Barbie of 2019, who says, "Math class is tough," when you press her button, sends a message to these kids that sticks. Not because it's true, but because repetition holds power. We're telling them from the age of 4 that they're not made for science. But regardless of all this, girls still build at that age. They try to build stories, systems, homes, and communities. The impulse is the same. But over time, they stop learning that what they're doing is engineering too. And that's why access to mentorship matters more than talent ever will. When I stood in that classroom holding up that pen, it wasn't about teaching them AI or teaching them technology. Because frankly, anyone can do that. But it's about showing them that the gap between them and technology does not exist. It's just a lack of exposure. Those children did not become capable in that moment when I stood there. They were always capable. They just needed someone to translate the word in a language that they understood. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen this illustration of equality versus equity. And it shows it very simply and very frankly that handing everyone the same resources does not create equal opportunity. What use is a laptop to someone who does not even have internet? What use is a course to someone who does not even know what technology is? And that's why today we need to focus on building real equity. Real equity comes when we create access to mentorship to make people feel like they belong. They seem like simple fundamentals, but we lack them so badly today. That's why we need people like you to step up and join in and inspire all those on the margins and show them that we're not so different after all. Because this is the moment when we need engineers more than ever. Today, we need to start redesigning how we live, how we consume, how we care for each other and the planet. We need to keep up with this age of AI and make sure that no one is left behind. Because the future cannot be built by a narrow slice of humanity. And if I leave you with one message, let it be this. All this technology that we're building, it's only successful when 8 billion people across the world can use it, trust it, and make it their own. Because today, what's the point of technology if we're just going to leave half the world behind? So let's reach out and translate our world together for people who have never been allowed to be a part of it. This is my vision for today, and I know I'm not alone. So I really hope that all of you would like to join the journey as well. Thank you.